So is anybody else wondering what's going to happen to Dan Bongino? I certainly am. And I'm not talking about losing a job. I think something could happen to Dan Bongino. And listen, I've never been a huge fan of Dan Bongino. I thought he spread a lot of misinformation and anger on his show. And honestly, I thought that was his shtick for a long time. Now I'm not so sure because, they're bringing in a new deputy director of the FBI to sit alongside him, which isn't a thing. And you have to look at what happened just prior to that. One of the last things Dan Bongino said publicly on social media before they announced that Andrew Bailey was going to be the new deputy director of the FBI was Dan Bongino promised to tell the truth. Isn't that wild? The man promises to tell the truth, and almost immediately, someone else is hired to do his job at the FBI. I know it's funny, even though I didn't like Dan Bongino, he did a piece on me one time. He basically called me an idiot. That's neither here nor there. All is fair in love and war on social media, but I enjoyed it. But, I think I'm starting to gain some respect for Dan. I take from a statement Dan made here not too long ago. What I have learned in the course of our properly predicated and necessary investigations into these aforementioned matters has shocked me to my core. We cannot run a republic like this. I'll never be the same after learning what I've learned. And that was a sort of a vague. I mean, he told you enough just to kind of freak you out a little bit. I think Dan Bongino got to Washington. I think he got into the FBI. And he saw a lot of things that contradicted the things that he told people for years. So you have a man sitting there with the realization that he has said a lot of things over the years that are completely untrue. And now he's like beside himself. Like now he doesn't know what to do. After that statement, he made another statement where he said, we are going to conduct these righteous and proper investigations by the book and in accordance with the law. We're going to get the answers we deserve. As with any investigation, I cannot predict where it will land, but I can promise you this, an honest and dignified effort at the truth, not my truth, not your truth, just the truth in all caps. When Dan Bongino says, not my truth, that leads me to believe that his truth has changed. Is he referring to his truth of the past, the things he said in the past, based on the information he had? Not my truth, not your truth. Who's he talking to when he says your truth? Is he talking to the people? Or is he talking to the administration? I think he's talking to the administration. But the truth in all caps. I think this was a direct message to the administration. Not my truth. Not your truth, but the truth. Wow. And so essentially his replacement was hired not long after that. He is set to take office on September the 8th. Now, since Dan Bongino is part of the Trump administration, he's forced to sign non-disclosure agreements. Anybody that comes within probably 100 yards of Donald Trump has to sign an NDA. He's literally famous for trying to prevent anyone from ever saying anything about him, ever, which only makes him much more suspicious. But I don't understand why this isn't a bigger story. The fact that an FBI director comes out and says he's going to tell the truth, and the next thing we know, it looks like he's going to get replaced for telling the truth. That's the logical assumption there. And yes, it is an assumption, but it is wrought with logic. I'm not sure that we will hear from Dan Bongino once he leaves his show. Once he leaves the FBI. I'm not sure he comes back and does a show where he talks. Does he just go away? Because the man knows something, and he knows something that he's not willing to accept. And the fact that he's not willing to accept that may put him in danger. And nobody's talking about that. They're talking about Andrew Bailey, who is such a Trump loyalist. He will do anything Donald Trump says. But nobody's talking about what's in store for Dan Bongino. And what I mean is down the road, him and his family. The question is, will he use what he knows for some betterment of the public, or will he go quietly into the night and protect himself and his family? I don't know. I don't know. And that is a question that can only be answered with time. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Really appreciate all my new followers and subscribers. I hope the lighting's better. I got some lighting. See you guys soon.